right, the wife and I are in the car. We're heading to the theater to see Dune, because something like that deserves to be seen on the big screen. Now, is this movie going to be epic and awesome, or is it going to be super long and super boring and a bunch of people talking about sci-fi things with dramatic music playing in the background? I don't know. We shall see.
You need to face your fears.
Come with me.
Okay, yeah, that movie was way better than I was expecting. It's one of my favorite movies this year, and I'm going to give it an A-. Welcome to Durbania. I'm Durbin, and this is my spoiler talk review for Dune 2021. What did you think of this movie? Do you agree with my grade of an A-? Would you go higher or would you go lower? Let's talk about that in the comments. Now, like I said in that cold open there, I did have pretty low expectations going into this movie. I saw Blade Runner 2049, and I feel like that movie is a little bit overrated. I don't dislike that movie, but I think it's a little bit long and a little bit boring, and I don't know, but I love the musical score in that movie and the visuals of that movie. The musical score is almost a character in itself, but really that's what I was expecting out of this, to be a little bit long, kind of boring, but great visuals and a great musical score. And I'm glad I went in kind of with those lower expectations because it really helped my enjoyment of this movie even more. And I was excited to see this movie. The trailers for it looked really good, and I grew up with the movie Dune 1984. My mom absolutely loves that movie, but that's also one of the reasons I had slightly lower expectations for this one. Not that I dislike the 1984 Dune movie, but it's so incredibly weird and strange. It's like I'm watching it and it's going in one ear and out the other. It's like my brain has been completely incapable of understanding it, retaining it, and holding on to it. It's like I'm watching it, and I feel like I get what I'm watching, but when it's over, did I just watch a movie? It was a weird paced, odd movie, and then you have visuals like this. And those are the type of things that stick in my mind. But following the story and following the plot was always hard for me. Then the trailer comes out and I get this visual. Yes, that's infinitely better. So I'm getting more and more excited for this movie as I'm watching the trailers. And I'm so happy that when I watched this movie, not only did it not disappoint me, but I really did enjoy it. The story, it's paced very well. It is a little bit slower paced, but the story is very compelling. And the pace of the movie helps bring you into that compelling story as it builds this world and brings you into what's going on. So that's something that I really enjoyed. And this time I was watching it and I was able to retain the story. I was able to piece together what was going on and the motivations. Now, one of the things that keeps it at an A- and not going higher is because I don't feel like I completely understand everything just yet. It's just, there's certain motivations and certain things. It's like, okay, but why? It's not like a big deal. It's just there's some things that even having watched this movie now twice that I'm still working to figure out. But beyond that, I really enjoyed it, and I feel like overall, I understand this movie a whole lot better. Is it worth seeing on the big screen? Yeah. This is a film that is absolutely made for the big screen. Part of that is the visuals. So I went to the theater, I saw it in the theater, and yeah, you do want like the biggest, crispest screen possible to really take in the visuals and all that. But for me, it was for the sound. And like I said, for Blade Runner 2049, the sound design, the musical score was my favorite part. I feel like the music was its own character, and I felt the exact same thing in this. I really felt like the musical score was kind of its own character. The sound design was its own character. I mean, right when the movie opens, before you even get the Warner Brothers logo, it has this crazy sound, and this message pops up on the screen that says, dreams, what does it say? Dreams are from the deep or something like that. And so it catches your attention and hooks you in right away. And I feel like seeing it on the big screen where you have that quality sound system all around you really brings you into it. I mean, it was vibrating through my chest. It felt like I was there. I mean, it was incredible the way they used the sound, the way they used the musical score to draw you in. And I wasn't surprised in the end to see the composer was Hans Zimmer. He's one of my favorite film score composers. But that's one of the big things that I absolutely loved about this movie. Yes, the visuals were stunning. You can already see that in the trailer, but it's the sound design that just completely draws me in as I'm watching this. So they did a great job with that. For that, I recommend seeing it on the theater. I did watch it on HBO Max this morning. I have a decent sound system at home, turned it up as high as it go, and I did enjoy it making the house rumble, but it doesn't quite replace that experience of having it on the big screen. So really, this is a huge, big screen worthy movie. If you're looking for something to see this weekend, I would definitely check this out on the big screen. Now, like I said, in terms of the story, I found it very compelling, and finally I was able to follow it. And I tried to read the book, and I think I got to page 91, and I just couldn't get any further. It is definitely a interesting and kind of strange story, but I feel like this did a really good job telling that story. And I feel like, and look, I'm just going to pronounce names wrong, and I hope you understand my history with this, so I apologize if I do, especially if you are a major fan of Dune. But finally, I feel like I understood the Bene Gesserits a whole lot better. Like, I understood their purpose, I understood them being in the shadows and using their special talents and abilities to direct the politics from the shadows. So there's a lot of really interesting things about them. And so one of the things I finally picked up in watching this, I always picked up that Paul was basically the Dune Messiah. That Paul was basically a savior. I always had picked that up. And I always picked up the idea of the prophecy and how he's fulfilling the prophecies and walking in that destiny. That was all interesting. But finally understanding that the Bene Gesserits and that Paul's mother was one of those Bene Gesserits, what they've been doing is, you know, mixing the bloodlines of the different houses with theirs, trying to create basically this Messiah, this savior.
You have proven you can rule yourself. Now you must learn to rule others. Something none of your ancestors learned.
And so they're already mad because Paul is a guy, not a girl. So they're already kind of upset with that. But he has a lot of potential and a lot of power, but they feel like because he's a guy, there's a lot of missed potential. And so here they set up the path on Dune so that he could walk this path and walk this destiny, which does lead to this question: is he really the Messiah? Is he really the savior of the Fremen? Am I saying that right? The Fremen. House Harkonnen, Fremen. House Harkonnen, Fremen. It's not that hard, Durbin. House Harkonnen, Fremen. Is he really their Messiah, or are they seeing what they've been told to see? And so it does kind of raise that question, but the more we get into Paul's mind, the more I think, no, maybe they, by design, were trying to mix the bloodlines to create this guy. And what they wanted to do was create a mind that could breach space and time in past and future. And so, yeah, they've done that. But I really feel like as you get into Paul's mind, you really do get this overwhelming sense of destiny.
There's something happening to me. There's something awakening in my mind. I can't control it.
That even though, yeah, they were trying to engineer and manufacture him to walk through these prophecies, it's also kind of just by nature he's walking through those prophecies because he is the fulfillment. At least that's kind of my interpretation in watching this. Did you have a different one? I would be very curious to have a conversation with you about that. But I really did like how they dealt with Paul having these dreams and these visions. One of the things that was so weird about Dune 1984 was you got into everybody's internal monologue, but they were always whispering like this.
Yes. Perhaps he would have that.
It was very uncomfortable. And they didn't do that at all in this. And I was so happy that they didn't do that at all in this. Yet they did a good enough job that I really felt like I understood these characters' motivations and I got into their minds. And again, especially Paul's mind and how he's viewing and seeing the world, how he's struggling with his call and his destiny. And that's what I found really compelling about the story. One of the things I think they did really well in this movie is the voice. Because it goes with the sound design. Like, that's one of my favorite things about this movie, and the way they did the voice. And it's like Star Wars, these are not the droids you're looking for. You could tell they took inspiration from the voice, but it's one of these gifts that the Bene Gesserit have. And so it was very interesting in the beginning when Paul uses the voice for the first time, and his mother says, make me give you the water. And so he says, give me the water. And it's like stupid, it sounded dumb, but then he really has to tune into the frequency. He's got to tune into his heart. He's got to hit the right tone and pitch. And then when he speaks, this is the part I loved about the sound design, is just seeing his mouth move and hearing kind of this, like this low rumble. Pass me the water. And then it cuts to the mother and her perspective. In her mind, we hear Paul's voice with this weird distorted mix on it. And then we hear her voice saying the lines. And then she starts to hand him the water and goes, you're almost there. It's like, what do you mean you're almost there? That was incredible. But it was because that sound design was really, really cool. And like I said, the visuals, like the weird shield thing in Dune 1984, it's such a turnoff to look at. The way they designed it in this, the way that shield turns red as a blade is touching a part of the shield or as it's starting to go through, like that was really cool. Oscar Isaacs did a great job in his performance, but when it got to his death scene and that little bug-like thing with that poison in it, hits his shield on the back, but it's that right place above the shoulder blades, you know, where you have the itch, and no matter how hard you try, you can't scratch it. That's exactly where that thing hit. And then it adds to this intensity because he's trying to get it, but he can't just reach it, and it goes right through his shield. And it's like, because it's the shield, you see it going so slow, and it's like, oh, this chance to get free of it, and he doesn't. And so, like, because of the visuals and the way they did all of that stuff, it really brings me more into this movie and more into this story. It just makes it easier to watch and easier to take in. So I really did enjoy that. So anyway, the way they did the voice, the way we understand the Bene Gesserit, and I kind of understood the politics of Dune a little bit better. Like how you have the Harkonnens. It's not that hard, Durbin. House Harkonnen, Fremen. I'm trying. The Harkonnens, and they were ordered to leave by the Emperor, and House Atreides was brought in, and it seems the Emperor kind of likes the idea of them going to war and weakening the houses. And that's the part where I need to get a little bit firmer on, and I am going to watch this movie more. I've seen it twice. I really enjoyed it. I'm going to be watching it more, but you could definitely get the idea of politics that's going into play here. And then you get the idea of the Harkonnens.
They're not human, they're brutal.
And how much they love Dune because all the wealth they've made off of the spice that allows interstellar travel and, you know, all kinds of valuable things, all the wealth on that planet. And then you have this idea that Dune's Messiah is really supposed to lead Arrakis to paradise. And they found that they could unlock water in Arrakis and turn it into a paradise. But once all that spice was discovered and all that value, it's left as a desert. So I'm understanding this story better. I still have a little ways to go, but I want to invest that time. And in fact, I might pick up the book and read it again. That's how much I enjoyed this movie, that it's like, okay, now that I have this visual and I have a bit better of an understanding, I would like to get into the book a little bit more.
It's time.
Now, kind of looking at this from a Christian perspective, one of the reasons my mom has always loved this movie, and she's always told me it is the idea of the voice, because it's like they speak the words and it happens. So it goes back to Romans 10:8. On the contrary, what does it say? The message is near you in your mouth and in your heart. Then Romans 10:9 and 10 talks about how you get saved. Believe in your heart that God raised Jesus from the dead, and then say with your mouth that Jesus is Lord. So my mom has always loved that idea of faith in the heart and speaking from that faith in the heart. And I really feel like you do see that pretty well illustrated in this movie, that anytime they had to use the voice, I mean, that awesome scene when they're in the, I call it the dragonfly because it looks like a dragonfly. I love the ship designs that they had in this and the things they were flying all over the desert. I thought those were really, really cool. But here you have the Harkonnens who have taken the mother and Paul, and they're in that ship, and so he's got to get the gag off his mother so she can use the voice, and he's trying to use the voice. It's all about finding the right pitch. It's like taking that time to get everything settled on the inside and speaking from that place of faith on the inside and seeing the power that those words have. And so that's what my mom has always loved about that, and it always took her back to that Romans chapter 10 chapter, and that's one of the things she loved. For me, what really drew me into the story this time is the idea of calling.
A great man doesn't seek to lead. He's called to it.
And the thing that I love about his calling is what you really see is that struggle with fear and overcoming fear with faith. It was always one of my favorite lines in the 1984 movie, in the book, and other versions where they say, fear is the mind killer. And I'm not going to quote this exactly right, but I do love this quote. Fear is the mind killer. It is the little death. I will permit it to pass over me and through me. And when it is gone, only I will remain. And I will be able to look at its path and see where it's come from and where it's going. It's that idea of overcoming fear with faith. It's that idea of not letting fear rule us, control us, and freeze us, because that is death. But faith is life. And so you have this scene in this movie where you have Paul and his mother, they're in the tent in the desert, and there's spice in the tent. So we understand that spice enhances Paul's vision. It awakens it even more. And so while he's in this tent, he sees this terrifying vision of the future and war, but also him leading and people chanting his name. And this completely fills him with fear. But part of his character arc in this movie is facing his fears and overcoming his fear with faith and learning to answer that call and walk his destiny. Paul is facing his fears and he's overcoming fear with faith. One of my favorite scenes where you see that illustrated is he has to fly the dragonfly thing through this huge sandstorm. And it's a huge storm, and it's frightening. While he's flying through it, there's spice in the air, and it awakens his vision, and he hears, people saying to him, you need to go with the flow. And so he turns off the engines and allows the dragonfly machine to go with the flow, and it saves their lives. He could have panicked, and he could have been in fear, and he could have tried to take control, and in which case they might have lost all control, and they might have died. But he, by faith, listened to what was being spoken to him in his vision, and it saved their lives. So it was very cool to see Paul's character arc. And I think they ended this movie in a very good place, too, because it ends with him being accepted by the Fremen. And so it's a really interesting ending in how they built to him accepting his calling and facing his fears and overcoming it with faith. I'm going to be very curious to see how this walks out, because I'm trying to remember the 1984 movie and how it ends, and all I can remember is this great big final battle that looks weird, but I'm having a hard time retaining that movie and the story. So I'm actually kind of glad I'm having a hard time with that. I'm kind of glad I'm still going into this cold because I'm very anxious to see what comes next. It was nice to be able to see this movie with fresh eyes and a fresh perspective and enjoy it for what it is. And I love seeing all the superheroes in this. I mean, come on. We have Aquaman. That was awesome to have him. We have Eric Selvig, who was our bad guy. By the way, he did a great job. I always found that Baron creepy and weird, and he played it to such a great way. Like, it was so good. It was so well done. Polka Dot Man was in here briefly, so that's 3. We have Zendaya. Yeah, we have Spider-Man's girl, MJ, in this. I mean, oh, yeah, and let's not forget Drax. That's at least 5.
Smile, Gurney. I am smiling.
And Thanos, 6. Oh my gosh, Josh Brolin was really good in this. He was one of my favorite characters. Maybe it was because he was Thanos and he had that Thanos voice, but also he just did a fantastic job. What did you think of Dune 2021? Are you like me where you're still fairly new to this? Are you like me where you tried to watch the 1984 movie and you're like, what am I seeing? You had a hard time retaining it, but this one really brought you in? Let's talk about that in the comments. While you're there, hit that subscribe button to become a Durbanian and hit that bell by the subscribe button so you're notified for my next movie review, ranking video, theological analysis, or anything else I do here. I'm Durbin. Thanks for checking out Durbania.